Celeste hears a splash. Then silence. Not even a scream. The world slows for a moment, the sounds of laughter from the distant vineyard party dulling into a low murmur, like a radio turned down mid-song. For a split second, the world stands still. Then instinct slams into her chest, and she runs. There's something about the way the sun flickers across the surface of the estate pool, the way the water trembles unnaturally. No bubbles, no movement. Just a floating doll face down, blonde yarn hair clumped together like seaweed, and nowhere, in that wide rectangle of shimmering blue, is Juniper. Camille's voice rings in her memory, not loud but carved in permanence. No one watches like a mother does. Celeste's feet are already pounding the concrete. The edge of the pool rushes up to meet her. She dives in, dress clinging, shoes dragging like anchors. The water is colder than she expected for July. She finds Juniper halfway to the bottom, limbs suspended like a marionette cut from its strings. Celeste grabs her waist and kicks upward, chest tightening. They break the surface, and Juniper coughs, then chokes, then screams. By the time Celeste drags her to the edge, Warren is already there. He doesn't speak at first. Just stares. Water streams from Celeste's sleeves as she lifts Juniper onto the deck, the girl sobbing now, wrapped in Celeste's arms. Warren's hands hover, unsure. Then he pulls Juniper from her, gentle but firm, and cradles his daughter like a prize won. "I was inside," he says finally, voice tight. "Who was supposed to be watching her?" "I didn't see," Celeste begins, her teeth chattering. Warren cuts her off. "You didn't see? That's your answer?" His gaze flickers down to her soaked blouse, then back up with something more dangerous than anger disappointment. "You're lucky nothing worse happened." Juniper, still crying, buries her face into his chest and mumbles something unintelligible. But Warren doesn't look at her. He looks only at Celeste. "Go change, dry off, and stay out of sight," he says. Celeste doesn't argue. Her legs are shaking. As she walks away, shoes squelching with every step, the only sound is the slow drip of water from her sleeves and the faint click of Warren's shoes as he carries his daughter into the house. She glances back just once. The doll Olivia, she remembers, is still floating in the pool, face down. No one retrieves it. Celeste goes back, wades in again, and fishes it out with her bare hands. The hallway feels colder than the water. Her wet clothes slap against her skin, leaving a trail of prints along the gleaming wood floor. No one speaks to her as she walks past the kitchen, past the staff lounge, up the narrow servants' stairs. Lucinda finds her in the laundry room 15 minutes later, huddled in a towel, hands shaking too hard to turn on the dryer. "I saw," Luce says simply, handing her a robe and avoiding her eyes. "You pulled her out. I saw the whole thing." Celeste doesn't answer. She's too tired to be angry, too numb to defend herself. "He'll come around," Luce adds after a moment, her voice softer. "He's just not ready to let you matter yet." Juniper doesn't appear at dinner. The dining wing remains quiet, the silver laid out like armor no one will wear. Celeste doesn't ask why. She just returns to the kitchen, silent as a shadow, and peels carrots with a grip that splits one down the middle. Later that night, she finds Olivia propped on a towel outside her door, clean, dry, and swaddled like a baby. No note, just the doll. Upstairs, in the far hallway, Warren's office light glows through the frosted glass. The estate is silent again, but this time it's a tense, breath-held silence like something's waiting to be broken. Celeste picks up the doll and runs a hand over the yarn hair. Her fingers pause at the sewn smile, so permanent, so falsely serene. She whispers to the empty hallway, "I couldn't let her die. But Warren has already turned his back. A splash, then silence. Not even a scream. The words kept echoing in Celeste's mind like a bell tolling at midnight, long after she'd changed into dry clothes and folded the towel with ritual precision. It was the memory of that absence of silence, when there should have been a voice, that haunted her most. Marissa's photo on the corridor wall had always been slightly crooked. Tonight, Celeste straightened it without thinking, fingers pausing at the engraved plaque. Camille Alcott, 1977-2020. Warren still hadn't replaced it with anything else, as if acknowledging death was the same as letting it win. The estate, by day, was a living museum. But by night, it became a vault of unspoken things. Shadows stretched long over oil paintings and darkened marble floors, hiding the fractures that daylight didn't dare expose. Celeste moved through those corridors like a whisper, alert to every creak and shifting wind. She'd intended to bring fresh tea to the East Solarium Juniper's favorite hideout. Instead, she found the girl alone, drawing in a spiral-bound notebook with the kind of focused fury only children knew. "Do you want company?" Celeste asked gently. Juniper nodded without looking up. "I'm drawing the pool before it got mean." Celeste knelt beside her. The drawing was crude but arresting sharp angles, swirls of blue, a red crayon used where none belonged. "What's this red?" "The man," Juniper said matter of fact. "He was there. I saw him. He watched before I fell." Celeste froze. "What man?" "I don't know. But Olivia told me not to tell." Celeste's breath caught. A chill ran down her arms. She said nothing more that night. But after Juniper had gone to bed, she returned to the garden and stood at the pool's edge, her reflection broken and rippling. There had been rumors among the staff items misplaced, a gate left open, the scent of cologne unfamiliar to the house. At breakfast, Warren sat at the head of the long oak table, posture rigid. He didn't touch his eggs. "You should have come to me sooner," he said when Celeste relayed Juniper's words. "I can't protect her if I don't know everything." Celeste kept her voice even. "You didn't want to know everything. That's different." The room quieted. Across from them, Lucinda glanced between the two, her hands stilling over the linen napkin she was folding. She knew that silence. It was the space where old truths curled up and went to sleep. By noon, the estate was crawling with the buzz of quiet orders, extra surveillance, new locks, no direct confrontation. Warren believed in managing threats from behind closed doors, but Celeste believed in something else exposure. The wound couldn't be cleaned unless it was opened. In the afternoon, she took Juniper into the rose garden. Camille's rose garden. "This is where your mom used to come when she needed answers," Celeste told her, kneeling to prune a dying bloom. Juniper studied the roses with narrowed eyes. "Then I'll come here too." She believed in telling the truth, even when it hurt. Juniper nodded. "Then I'll tell you a secret. Olivia said the man knew Daddy. He waved at him before." Celeste's hands paused. Her shears slipped. A single petal dropped, red and fragile, onto the soil. Inside the study, Warren examined the estate's security logs. A flicker on the motion camera from 2 nights ago. Just a shadow. A figure that paused near the greenhouse, then vanished. When Celeste entered, she didn't knock. "I need you to trust me," she said simply. Warren stared at her. "You ask that like it's an easy thing. You've kept people like me in the corners for years, but you know who I am now. You saw it." He didn't respond. "Camille wrote something once," Celeste continued. "She said you were too focused on reputation to recognize the real rot. That's how it gets in through what you won't see." Warren's mouth tightened. Outside, the sun began its slow descent, gold spilling through the bay windows. Shadows lengthened across Camille's old piano, dust swirling in the light. He finally spoke. "Then let's see it. All of it." They devised a plan, a trap, baited with a decoy trust document, a copy of the one that gave Juniper full control of the estate at age 21, left purposefully exposed, placed where someone watching would notice. That night, Celeste returned to her room and retrieved a small box beneath the floorboard. Inside were folded notes, brittle with time Camille's handwriting, pressed rose petals, and the broken chain of a necklace once worn in the garden. She took out one note, read it twice. "He thinks I don't see, but I've always seen. I leave Juniper in your care if I cannot protect her." Celeste didn't cry. She rarely did. But she tucked that letter into her pocket and went to bed with her hand still resting over it. The next day, the staff noticed something strange. Someone had been in the wine cellar overnight. A bottle of Rothschild was missing. The gate latch was undone. The cameras had flickered. But nothing else was touched. Later that evening, as Celeste walked the grounds alone, she caught the scent of unfamiliar cologne on the breeze, sweet, acidic, and completely out of place. When she turned, no one was there, only the roses whispering in the wind. "He'll come back," she said aloud. "And this time, I'll be waiting." In the greenhouse, far from sight, a single orchid bud bloomed without warning. Its petals opened under moonlight, delicate and bright, as if to say, "We see you too." But inside the greenhouse, something shifted. A flashlight beam flickered briefly across the floor, then disappeared. Warren Alcott never allowed anyone to enter the West Wing after sunset. But tonight, the door stood open. Celeste didn't hesitate. The storm outside had picked up, wind rattling the shutters and brushing rain against the stained glass windows like fingers tapping insistently. She moved swiftly down the corridor, past the long dormant music room, past the rows of portraits where the eyes never seemed to blink. In her hand, she held the decoy trust document, printed, sealed, and slipped into a conspicuous envelope marked "Private." She placed it carefully inside the drawer of Warren's desk and left it slightly ajar. Visible enough for the curious. Bait set. Warren stood near the fireplace, arms crossed, silent. The fire crackled behind him, throwing flickers of light across the coffered ceiling. He didn't speak as she passed him. But something in his eyes, an almost imperceptible nod, said, "I see what you're doing. Do it well." For the first time, they were working together. By morning, the bait was gone. No broken glass, no forced entry, just an empty drawer and a faint trace of citrus cologne in the air. Celeste stood by the window of the breakfast room, watching Juniper try to feed toast to a stray cat outside. The child's shoulders were lighter today, her eyes less wary. Hope, Celeste thought, had a texture. It was like warm bread and soft flannel, like the first breeze through a spring open window. Lucinda entered quietly, holding a newspaper, her face tight. "You should see this." On the front page, whispers of corruption in the Alcott Family Trust. Below the headline, a grainy black and white photo of Preston Maddox stepping out of a black SUV. Warren read the article 3 times. Each time, his face grew more still. Then he folded the paper, looked at Celeste, and said, "We don't wait anymore." The estate's lawyer, Miriam Lowry, arrived by noon. Older, with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue, she brought files that had not seen daylight in 2 decades. Camille's original trust documents, handwritten notes, a sealed envelope marked, "In the event of breach of fiduciary trust." Inside, a list of names: Preston Maddox, Sterling Reed, a few others. They started the wine business together, Miriam explained, tapping the folder. Camille suspected they were moving funds offshore. She kept records. I helped her draft the fallback trust, the one that makes Juniper sole heir and places you, Celeste, as interim executor if Warren is incapacitated or compromised. Celeste's breath caught. She named me? Not in public documents, but here. Miriam handed her a letter. The handwriting was unmistakably Camille's, curved, fluid, certain. Celeste didn't read it aloud. She folded it slowly and placed it in her pocket. That evening, Warren and Celeste moved quietly. They did not alert the staff. They did not call the police. Instead, they laid one more trap, this time in the greenhouse. A second copy of the trust, a forged authorization letter, and a recording device hidden beneath the orchid bed. Warren remained skeptical. Do you really think Preston will fall for this? He's already stolen once, Celeste said. He thinks we're still blind. The greenhouse smelled of damp earth and blooming white orchids. It had been Camille's sanctuary, the place where she had written her final letters, planted her last hopes. Just before midnight, the motion sensor light flared. Celeste, watching from the upstairs window with a pair of binoculars, caught the shape of a man entering through the side gate. Dark jacket, gloves, confident stride. Preston. He moved like he owned the place. Inside the greenhouse, he made no attempt to be discreet. He headed straight to the desk, flipped open the top drawer, and removed the forged trust copy. He didn't pause, didn't hesitate. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Celeste, recording every word from the upstairs receiver, listened. She left it out again. It's the same document she's planning to make the switch official. No, Warren doesn't know. Yes, I'll shred it. But if Camille's daughter gets full control, we're done. Yes. I know what I have to do. He hung up. Celeste didn't wait. She bolted downstairs. By the time she reached the greenhouse, Preston was still there, leaning over the orchid table, the document now torn in half in his hand. Expecting someone else? She asked quietly from the doorway. He turned slowly. His face did not register surprise. I should have known, he said. Camille always trusted you too much. She trusted me enough to protect what she built. You're not family. No, Celeste replied, stepping closer. But I'm what she chose when family failed her. He took a step forward, as if to intimidate. But Warren appeared behind him, silent and cold. Preston froze. You called Sterling Reed, Warren said. He's under federal investigation, and now you are too. Preston's hands trembled. You can't prove anything. Celeste held up the audio recorder. We don't have to. You just did. The police arrived 17 minutes later. As Preston was led out in handcuffs, Juniper watched from her bedroom window, her face pale against the glass. She turned to Celeste and whispered, I think the roses are safe now. Celeste knelt beside her, brushed the girl's hair back from her forehead, and said, They're safer, but we're not finished. Juniper frowned. There's more? Celeste nodded. There's always more when the roots run deep. Camille's voice was faint, but it lived in the cracks of the house. Celeste stood in the hallway outside the study, hand resting on the carved frame of the door, listening to nothing and everything. It was in the groan of the old wood beneath her slippers. The faint click of the grandfather clock in the foyer. The gentle rustle of pages from a book Juniper had left on the couch, half read. A memory murmured in quiet, domestic rhythm. If anything happens to me, it won't be random. The words had haunted Celeste for years, tucked away like folded linens she never dared to unpack. Now they pressed against her like breath on glass, undeniable. Preston Maddox had been removed in cuffs, The documents had been recovered. But Camille's death still lingered like a riddle with a missing piece. Warren had retreated since the arrest. He spent hours in the cellar, reviewing records, poring over decades of vineyard finances. Celeste found him there one evening with a ledger open, his eyes red from exhaustion, a bottle of unopened Cabernet beside him. She was scared, he said, not looking up. Not just of them, of me too. Celeste leaned against the stone wall, arms folded. She didn't fear you, Warren. She feared who you might become if you turned your face away too long. She kept things from me. She protected you from what she couldn't explain. He exhaled heavily. We buried the wrong secrets, didn't we? That night, Lucinda brought up the subject no one dared to name. I've been here 27 years, she said while prepping tea in the kitchen, and in all that time, Camille never once walked through the east corridor after dark. Celeste looked up from the stovetop. That's where the cellar access used to be, before it was sealed. Exactly, Lucinda replied. She said it gave her chills. After Lucinda went to bed, Celeste walked that hallway alone. Her footsteps echoed, lonely and sharp. She paused near the baseboard and ran her hand along the wall. There, just behind the old tapestry, was a groove barely noticeable, but real. She fetched a flashlight and returned. When she peeled back the tapestry, her breath caught. A hidden panel, unlatched. The passage descended in a tight spiral, the air stale and heavy with mold. She moved slowly, steps careful, flashlight flickering. At the bottom she found a forgotten cellar older than the main one, built with hand-hewn stone. Shelves lined with dusty crates and ledgers in iron-latched boxes. But it wasn't the crates that stopped her. It was the small desk, and on it an envelope addressed to my daughter. Juniper. Celeste opened it with trembling hands. Inside, a second letter addressed to herself. Celeste, if you found this, it means you kept your promise. I trust you'll do what needs to be done. Beneath the letters, a thumb drive. She returned to the house and plugged it into her old laptop. Warren sat beside her in the study as the files opened. Videos. Recordings. Camille, speaking softly into the camera, dated only 6 months before her death. Preston came again today, Camille said, voice tight. He mentioned a revised will, asked me to sign something. I said no. He threatened me, not directly, but with enough weight I know what he meant. I think he's drugging my wine. I've begun storing my own bottles separately. Another file. If anything happens to me, please tell Juniper the truth. Not just the legal truth, but who her mother was, what she loved, what she feared. And Celeste, if you're the one watching this, thank you. I was never brave, not like you. Warren turned away. The last file was short. A clip of Preston's voice in conversation with an unknown man. If she won't sign, we wait. Accidents happen in wine country. Celeste closed the laptop slowly. We give this to the police, she said, but Warren shook his head. We give it to the press. She blinked. You'd expose the family like that? I'd expose the rot, he said. It's time. The next morning, Juniper played quietly with Olivia in the garden, unaware that her mother's voice had returned, not as memory but as witness. Celeste packed the drive in a manila envelope. She would deliver it herself. But just before leaving, she noticed something strange in the foyer mirror. A smear almost like a handprint too high for a child. She looked up. The camera in the hallway was unplugged. Someone had been inside. Again. That evening, Celeste returned to her room and locked the door, but sleep never came. In the hallway, footsteps passed by once, then twice, then stopped entirely. The air went still. Then, just outside her door, a whisper. Some truths should stay buried. A single knock at the front door, no more, no less, echoed through the house like a warning bell. Celeste was in the conservatory, trimming back the dying edges of Camille's beloved roses, when she heard it. Just one knock. Not urgent, not impatient, deliberate. She set the shears down slowly, wiping her palms against her apron, her pulse already quickening. Juniper had gone with Lucinda to town for fresh bread. Warren was upstairs, revisiting tax ledgers, hoping for financial threads to pull. The house, for the moment, was hers. When she opened the door, a man stood there, early 50s, clean-shaven, pressed slacks, a heavy briefcase in one hand and a knowing calm in his expression. He introduced himself as Elijah Knox. No badge, no business card, just his name and a look that said he had waited long enough. He didn't ask to come in. He stated that he would. And Celeste, before realizing she had agreed, stepped aside. They sat in the parlor. Elijah didn't touch the tea she offered. Instead, he opened his case and withdrew a folder. Inside, photographs, not of Camille, not of Preston, but of Juniper Young, happy, unaware, taken at the estate, at school, at the lake, some from far away, others disturbingly close. "Who are you?" Celeste asked, voice tight. Elijah smiled faintly. "I'm someone who worked with Camille a long time ago, before she became a mother, before she chose this sanctuary." Celeste didn't blink. "You're not here about wine." "No," he said. "I'm here about what she ran from, and what she left in my care." He handed her a sealed envelope, marked in Camille's unmistakable handwriting. "In the event Juniper is in danger." "She feared more than Preston," Elijah continued. "She feared what would happen if the wrong people learned Juniper was never formally adopted." Celeste froze. "She wasn't." "Not in the way you think. Camille took Juniper in after a deal fell through. She made it legal enough to silence questions, but there were complications, and people who weren't happy." Celeste opened the envelope. Inside, hospital forms, sworn statements, a birth certificate with an unfamiliar name, Juniper Grace Whitmore, and a signed letter from Camille explaining that she had taken Juniper in after the death of her biological mother, a woman she had once mentored in California. It wasn't an adoption, it was a promise kept. "She never told Warren," Elijah said. "Never told you. But she trusted you to protect Juniper, even when the truth surfaced." Celeste's hands trembled. "Why now?" "Because Preston's arrest has opened doors. There are people who will want to claim Juniper as leverage, or worse." Warren entered then, silent as ever, but his eyes locked on the documents in Celeste's hands. "Is it true?" he asked. Celeste couldn't speak. Elijah stood. "You have decisions to make, about truth, about legacy, and about what you're willing to sacrifice." He left without further explanation. That night Celeste sat with Warren at the old kitchen table. They didn't speak for a long time. Finally, Warren asked, "Did Camille ever plan to tell me?" "She wanted to," Celeste said, "but she feared it would change how you saw her, how you saw Juniper." "She was right," he murmured. The silence that followed was deep, not cruel, just full of weight. Juniper returned home after sunset, cheeks flushed from the wind, arms full of warm bread. She bounced through the front hall, humming, unaware of the storm stirring quietly behind the parlor door. Upstairs, Celeste laid out the new documents. Miriam Lowry would need them first thing in the morning. The truth, once set in motion, refused to sleep. Later, while brushing Juniper's hair, Celeste tried to speak, but the words failed her. Juniper looked up with wide eyes and asked, "Am I in trouble?" Celeste shook her head. No, baby. You're just more special than we realized. Juniper nodded solemnly, as if this made perfect sense. After Juniper fell asleep, Celeste sat on the edge of her own bed, the folder in her lap, her thoughts 1,000 miles away back in California, in a time Camille never spoke of. Then, faintly, she heard a window creak. She rose, walked to the hallway. In the distance, glass shattered. A soft thump, then silence. She wasn't alone in the house. The scent of burning paper lingered long after the fire had gone out. Celeste stood barefoot in the study, staring at the fireplace where someone recent, clumsy, had tried to destroy documents but failed. Bits of charred paper fluttered in the hearth, edges curled like petals. She reached in with the fireplace tongs and pulled a blackened corner free. Still legible beneath the soot. Transfer of guardianship. She didn't need the rest to know what it was. Someone had broken in, not to steal, but to erase. Upstairs, Juniper slept soundly. Down the hall, Warren paced in his robe, phone clutched to his ear. The police had come and gone, unconvinced of forced entry. No prints, no damage. Just the broken latch on the back window and the slow, deliberate sabotage of Camille's carefully laid plans. Miriam Lowry arrived the next morning with an intensity Celeste hadn't seen before. Her usual crisp professionalism gave way to open anxiety. "This is escalating," Miriam said, flipping through her briefcase. "You don't burn legal records unless you're preparing to challenge a guardianship in court or remove the child outright." Warren's voice cracked. "But there's no legal claim on her, is there?" "There is now," Miriam replied, placing a copy of an emergency court summons on the table. "Someone filed a petition to declare Juniper's guardianship invalid. They're citing fraudulent adoption, concealed identity, and unauthorized financial control." Celeste scanned the document. The petitioner's name. Sterling Reed. She hadn't heard his name in 10 years. Warren's hands curled into fists. "He's resurfaced?" "He's behind the shell companies Preston used. If Sterling can prove Camille never finalized adoption papers, he could argue Juniper is a ward of the state, or worse, that he's entitled to her estate as her closest legal guardian." "Closest?" Celeste scoffed. "He's not even blood." "That's the irony," Miriam said. "He's Juniper's biological uncle." Celeste stood frozen. Miriam continued, softer now. "Camille took Juniper in after her sister died. Sterling was deemed unfit at the time addiction, fraud, but he's since rehabilitated and wants back in." "He wants control," Celeste muttered. Juniper entered just then, cradling her sketchbook. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked quietly, sensing the tension. "No," Celeste said, moving to kneel in front of her. "You didn't do anything wrong. You just have people fighting over you. People who don't understand what love means." Juniper's lip trembled. "Will I have to leave?" "Not if I have anything to say about it," Celeste whispered, hugging her tightly. That evening, as the house darkened and rain moved in again from the west, Celeste opened Camille's last journal. She had never dared to read it before, never felt entitled. But now, as the storm swelled and the thunder rolled low across the hills, she needed to hear Camille's voice again. The entries were dated weeks before Camille's death. Desperate, scattered. "I fear Sterling's reach more than Preston's cunning. He won't come directly. He'll come through Juniper, through the law, through loopholes I thought I'd buried. If Celeste is reading this, then I failed. But maybe she won't." Celeste closed the book slowly, fingers trembling. Later that night, Lucinda came to her room with something wrapped in cloth. It was Camille's locket, long thought lost. Inside, a photo of a baby Juniper and a handwritten note, so faint it took a magnifying glass to read. Blood does not make you a mother. Choice does. The next morning, Celeste packed a small overnight bag for Juniper. "You're going away?" the child asked, eyes wide. "No, baby, you are. Just for a night or two with Lucinda. Somewhere safe." Juniper's chin quivered, but she nodded. "Will you come find me?" Celeste cupped her face. "There's not a place on earth where I wouldn't." After Lucinda and Juniper left for the safe house Miriam had arranged, Celeste remained at the estate. It was the first time she'd felt alone in the house in years. She walked the halls slowly, checking locks, securing windows. But something felt off. It wasn't the silence, it was the pressure, like being watched from just beyond the edge of the candlelight. At the foot of the staircase, she saw it. A pair of muddy boot prints, fresh leading from the back door to the study. And in the study, on Camille's desk, a single sheet of paper sat folded and waiting. It read, "You were warned. Stay out of court." In the quiet after the storm, when the vineyard slept under a blanket of early spring fog, Celeste stood alone on the back porch, watching mist swirl over the grape rows Camille once walked every morning. The house behind her, once echoing with the brittle tension of secrets and suspicion, was now still, though not hollow. Something had shifted. Not everything was mended, not every wrong forgiven, but something essential had settled. A reckoning had come and passed, and those left standing had begun the quiet, painful work of choosing who they wanted to be in its aftermath. Sterling's petition had collapsed under the weight of truth. The recordings, the documents, the testimonies Camille had hidden like breadcrumbs across the estate all came together like a final letter she had written with her life. The courts had sided with Juniper's stability, her well-being, and above all, the strength of the bonds that had raised her. Blood alone did not win. Care did. And in that small courtroom, with Miriam's voice calm but resolute, and Warren's hand tightly clasping Celeste's, Juniper's story was not rewritten, it was finally told. But the cost was not light. Trust between Celeste and Warren had been stretched, torn, and gently stitched back together. The things Camille never said weighed heavy, not just in their content, but in the silence she left behind. They both understood now that love sometimes required secrets, and sometimes love required breaking them. Warren apologized in quiet acts, a repaired stair rail, a bottle of Camille's favorite wine opened on a rainy evening. Celeste accepted in turn, not with words, but by choosing to stay, to continue the rhythm of the home, and to raise Juniper with the same fierce clarity Camille had once displayed. Juniper never fully understood the danger she had been in, but she understood, with a wisdom beyond her years, that family was something earned. She began drawing pictures of the house different each time. In one, the windows smiled. In another, Camille stood under the oak tree. In her favorite, Celeste held her hand, while Lucinda laughed in the kitchen, and Warren looked on from the porch, his face no longer shadowed. Lucinda never left. "Who'd keep this place from falling apart without me?" she joked, but everyone knew her reason ran deeper. She had watched generations pass through this house, watched secrets rot the foundation, and truth rebuild it brick by brick. In many ways, she had always known. The town, once eager to whisper about the Maddox estate, now spoke with quiet reverence. Not just because of the scandal that had been exposed, but because of how it had been handled. No lawsuits, no tabloids, just the slow, human work of facing what most families would bury. Neighbors sent letters, baked goods, shy condolences, and curious questions. And the vineyard, once threatened by legal wrangling and uncertain heirs, flourished again. Camille's final harvest had yielded a blend that would win awards not for its flavor alone, but for the story behind its label. The 2023 Juniper Reserve was bottled with a handwritten line from Camille on the cork. Love is what you protect when no one is watching. At night, when Juniper couldn't sleep, Celeste would lie beside her and tell stories, not fairy tales, but real ones. Of Camille as a young woman, of the decisions she made that no one saw, of Warren's younger years, full of ambition and blindness, of herself, and how she once thought the truth was something you fought, not carried. They would fall asleep holding hands, dreams heavier but steadier than before. Miriam continued to visit the house long after the trial ended. She and Celeste developed a quiet friendship rooted in survival. They talked about justice, about how the law sometimes caught up too late, but also about gardens, grief, and the odd solace of old books. "We don't always get closure," Miriam once said, "but sometimes we get continuation." And so they continued. No one spoke much of Sterling after the trial. His final attempt to reclaim Juniper had failed, and with it, his power unraveled. Camille's journals confirmed what many had suspected: he had never wanted Juniper as a niece, only as leverage. And when he realized she was loved too fiercely to be taken, he disappeared like fog burned off by the sun. On the first anniversary of Camille's death, they held a gathering beneath the old oak tree. Just family and close friends. Celeste read aloud from Camille's final letter, one no one knew she had written, tucked inside a cookbook she had gifted Lucinda years before. It wasn't dramatic, just a simple reflection on regret, motherhood, and the hope that, when my daughter laughs, she will sound free. And she did. There are still ghosts in the house memories that creak on the stairs or whisper from the pantry at dusk. But they no longer terrify. They witness. They teach. The house no longer groans beneath the weight of what was hidden. It breathes again. Forgiveness, Celeste learned, is not an act. It is a season. It comes in slow, unsteady warmth after a long winter. It does not forget. It does not absolve, but it grows things, grows people. Family is not the blood that binds. It is the choice to return, to stay, to listen, and to protect what matters even when the world says you shouldn't. In the end, Camille's greatest legacy wasn't the vineyard or the vintage or even the estate. It was the clarity with which she saw love, not as obligation, but as action. As truth whispered and truth held. And that philosophy remains. The deepest roots grow not from blood, but from care and from courage to stand in truth even when it breaks you first. If you felt something watching this story unfold, if you believe in the power of second chances, in the grace of honesty, and in the fierce dignity of family, then leave a number 1 in the comments to let us know you're with us. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel to hear the next story, because sometimes the most powerful legacies are the ones no one expected to survive.